Hello, and thank you for your interest in our work. We are a team of researchers and advocates from the American Civil Liberties Union and the Human Rights Data Analysis Group. In this presentation, we will discuss our algorithmic audit of the Allegheny Family Screening Tool, or AFST, titled "The Devil is in the Details: Interrogating Values Embedded in the Allegheny Family Screening Tool." Next. First, some background on the child welfare system. A large body of work and many years of organizing by affected communities has demonstrated the child welfare system's harm, including how the system operates to surveil, criminalize, and separate marginalized families, often for conditions associated with poverty, and how it attributes the impacts of structural inequality to individual caregivers' failings. These harms are stunningly uneven. More than 1 in 2 Black children in the US will be subject to a CPS investigation, and more than 1 in 10 Black children will be separated from their family by the time they are 18. In recent years, advocates have raised concerns about how predictive analytics tools can facilitate this broad family surveillance. As of 2021, child welfare agencies in at least 26 states and the District of Columbia had considered using predictive analytics tools, and jurisdictions in at least 11 states were using them. Next. Launched in 2016, the AFST was created by the Allegheny County Department of Human Services, or DHS, and a team of external researchers. The AFST operates at the screening stage, when a call screening worker must decide whether to investigate an initial allegation of child neglect that comes through the county hotline. The AFST estimates the probability that a child will be removed from their home by DHS and placed in foster care within 2 years of being referred to the agency. And the training data included information from past referrals to and investigations by DHS, medical records, and interactions with the juvenile probation system and other government systems. Since the tool was launched in 2016, several additional iterations of the tool have been developed. Prior research on the AFST has focused on evaluating its performance in the county's child welfare processes, including examinations of design, its performance in deployment, and its impact on racial disparities in the county's decision-making process.
We analyzed the de-identified data produced in response to a data request by the Allegheny County Department of Human Services. This included data from 2010 to 2014 that was very similar to the training data used for what we call version 2 of the AFST, and 3 months of production data from 2021, when that version was deployed. Additional details about the design of the tool and changes to the tool between iterations are described in a model card we created for the FSC, included as an appendix in our paper. A growing body of work has focused on understanding the use of algorithmic tools across various domains as encoding policy choices, building on work beyond technical systems as value-laden artifacts. This work often posits that the designers of algorithmic systems do not work in isolation. They can function as political actors, making decisions with policy impacts that can contribute to the harms of machine learning systems. With this framing, we analyze 3 values embedded in the design decisions of the FSC, related to data collection, feature selection, and the post-processing of model outputs. We analyze the impacts of these design decisions on the FSC's deployment, arguing that these choices function as policy decisions that can exacerbate the harms of structural discrimination for already marginalized communities.
The first value we interrogate is one we refer to as risky by association. And this value has to do with how the model's outputs are aggregated. To understand what the outputs of the AFST might look like, imagine a hypothetical family with 3 children referred to the county agency. The AFST would generate individual predicted probabilities and risk scores for each child on the referral, as shown on the left in the what the model outputs section. But that's not what the call screener ultimately sees, because there's an aggregation process that occurs for these risk scores and probabilities. So what the call screener ultimately sees is just a single risk score or a label like high risk. And in this first part of our analysis, we examine these aggregation decisions as policy choices, exploring their impacts and potential alternatives to this presentation of model outputs. In looking at other ways that scores could have been presented to call screeners, we showed how these different grouping methods could present varying pictures of how the AFST performs using metrics like the area under the curve and the false positive rate. We argue that the AFST's method of grouping risk scores produces racial disparities and presents a misleading picture of families evaluated by the tool, effectively treating families as risky by association.
The next value we interrogate is the more data, the better. One of the county's goals in adopting the AFST, as stated in a 2018 process evaluation, was to make decisions based on as much information as possible. This information included records from public welfare agencies and behavioral health agencies and programs, including information that references or may be a proxy for one's disability status. Note that private care might not be recorded in these variables. Imagine two hypothetical individuals who look exactly the same in the eyes of the AFST, with one exception. Child A and their family have a history of using county behavioral health services, and child B and their family do not. We showed through our analysis that child A's risk score on the 1 to 20 scale could be 0 to 4 points higher than child B's risk score. Next.
Furthermore, we looked specifically at features related to the involvement, to families' involvement with juvenile and adult criminal legal systems, especially so-called ever-in features, which show whether somebody involved on a referral has ever been affected by the racially biased criminal legal and policing systems. We examined these features through the lens of algorithmic recourse. Since they're immutable, these predictors have the effect of casting permanent suspicion without offering any means of recourse for families who are marked by the indicators. In the data that we analyzed, we found that these ever-in features disproportionately marked Black families without improving the model's overall performance. We also found that the ASFT's recommendations would have produced greater racial disparities in screening rates than an alternate version of the model that didn't take these ever-in factors into consideration. Next.
In our analysis of the ever-in features and the training data for the AFST, we retrained the model to see how it would have performed had features related to the criminal legal system and behavioral health been excluded. Removing either the criminal legal system or behavioral health features from the training data, or removing all of them, reduced the AUC on the test data of the resulting model by less than 0.01 in all cases. This experimentation with the feature sets showed us that we were able to achieve models with similar predictive accuracy to the deployed AFST model. Therefore, given model multiplicity in this context, where models with different feature sets can achieve similar predictive performance, we argue that the decision of which features to include in a given model functions as a policy choice. Next.
Limitations. We analyzed a limited set of design decisions related to a particular version of the AFST. We think this work is a useful case study with applications beyond this particular version of the AFST, but recognize the nuances of our findings may not also extend to the design of other tools. Additionally, as with any algorithmic tool, examinations of the tool should be holistic and should consider aspects of design and deployment beyond those considered here. Future work should further explore the specific issues that we highlight and should consider similar questions in the context of structured decision-making tools and other predictive tools used in the child welfare system and other contexts. Next. Finally, in this work, we find that choices in the design of the AFST have policy impacts. They may confuse the interpretation of the AFST's outputs, introduce variables that give families no opportunity for recourse, may perpetuate racial bias, and may score people who may have disabilities as inherently riskier. Viewed together and promulgated through the algorithm, these choices can exacerbate the harms of structural discrimination for already marginalized communities. These challenges demonstrate the urgent need for transparency, independent oversight, and meaningful recourse for families. Families may have no knowledge of the policies embedded in the tools imposed upon them, no ability to know how the tool was used to make life-altering decisions, and are ultimately limited in their ability to fight for their civil liberties, cementing long-standing traditions of how family regulation agencies operate.